We are beginning a new series today. Today is the first Sunday in Advent. We lit the candle of hope. Advent is the Sunday that segues the people of God into the church calendar that lasts all through, not just Christmas and Epiphany, but also Lent, all the way through Pentecost, if that's right? You got like half the year is the church calendar, half the year is what's called ordinary time, thereabouts, not exactly. And so we are about to be in the church calendar with millions of Christians, if not billions, all over the world celebrating this time of year, all throughout church history. I think there's just something rich in looking not just as like Christmas, how it affects us and our families here, but actually think about the worldwide effect of the season of Advent. Christians that have held and practiced and observed that throughout the last 2,000 years, and how deeply rooted we are. So Christmas isn't just something where we're just trying to figure out presents and food and what family to visit and what time. It's really this ancient practice of getting in touch with the earthiness of Jesus' birth. And so we're starting a new series called Unexpected Advent. I'm going to be talking today about the surprise of his arrival. I find that there are two kinds of people in the world. There are people that love surprises, and there are people that are married to them and get surprise birthday parties. When I was 30, when I turned 30, we were married for just over a year and a half. I was turned 30, I was excited, and Sarah took me out for a celebration. That's too much, a little bit too much. That's okay. You don't want to see me that much, do you? Let's be honest. So we're going over to a friend's house. We pull up his long drive, and all these cars are there, and I know I'm walking into something. And sure enough, my parents, her parents, some other family, friends from out of town, they're all gathered. Surprise, it's Josh's birthday, and I'm overwhelmed. If you like me, if you know me, I don't love surprises. I kind of like to plan for surprises, and I totally did not see that coming. So to her credit, she really surprised me. But she asked one of our mutual, a friend, why does Josh keep going outside, do you think? Because I kept dismissing myself from the party, pitch black in the country, just to stand on the driveway and kind of okay, I can go back in there. Right? These are all my family and friends, you know what I mean? And I'm okay, you can do this, Josh. I'm talking myself through it. Because I'm introverted, and when I'm surprised, I'm I feel just over my head. So anyway, two kinds of people, which are you? Those that love surprises, or the people that are married to them and put up with them. Bless God. We often expect God to do things that we expect, right? That's I know that's redundant, but that's how it works, is that we're often frustrated. I don't know maybe it's not you all because you're super extra holy people or something, but other people, other Christians, are frustrated with God because God doesn't do the things that they want him to do, that they expect him to do, that they've kind of had all this, they call it hope, but maybe more wishful thinking that God would do certain things and he doesn't do it. Because God, he's I've heard it, we say to God, here, kitty, kitty, and he's actually the Lion of the tribe of Judah who roars very loudly, right? So that's our dynamic with God sometimes, is we think he's kind of tame and caged, and he's more of this kind of genie, and we rub the lamp, and he's going to do the things that we want him to do. And God didn't sign up for that. He created everything, which means he created the rules. It's called God's will, right? And we either surrender to it, submit to it, or don't, But we oftentimes carry this unarticulated frustration because God will not mind his manners and do what I ask him to do, right? So when we look at the context of the first advent of Christ, his birth, we can see these expectations playing out, and we see a lot of confusion because Jesus shows up and they're totally expecting something else. rather than what God is walking out in front of them. And the tension that if you can just kind of dust off, like if you've grown up in the church and this is your 50th Advent that you celebrated on this, like you got to dust this story off a little bit. There's quite a bit of humor in it because Jesus keeps messing people up and kind of messing with people a bit too, I think, just for fun, because he's God, because he can do that and he has a sense of humor. But the tension that is growing that we see from the very beginning is because God shows up so unexpectedly, and it's a huge surprise to everyone, right? So here's some of Israel's expectation versus the reality, okay? Israel had an expectation that the Messiah would arrive to take the royal throne of Israel. The reality is that Jesus is born in a feeding trough. Little bit different than this kingly procession that they're expecting. They expect the Roman army to be overthrown in a violent revolution where they win. The reality is Roman soldiers are commended for their faith by Jesus. It's shocking to a Jew that a Roman soldier would be commended for anything because they're trespassing on God's holy land, right? The expectation was that there would be widespread holiness that was the forebearer of the Messiah coming, but also the result that people would turn to God en masse. That we would call it maybe a revival or at least a renewal. The reality is there's widespread confusion. People are going, what the heck is this guy talking about? What the heck is going on? Because this can't be God. The expectation was Israel's golden age of prosperity would return, like in the days of David and Solomon. The reality was that the temple is completely destroyed and Israel is scattered. So actually the opposite of what they were expecting. They expected that Messiah would be recognized and welcomed with open arms by all the people. The reality is Jesus is denounced by the crowds and sentenced to death by the religious leaders. So again, quite opposite of what the expectation was. Because, and here's the thing, if you think about this, God could have done it their way. Why didn't he? Why didn't he just play nice, right? Why doesn't God just play? Don't you wonder that? Why don't you just play nice every once in a while, God? It's Christmas. It's like your holiday, right? Just be nice to people. I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. That's just for free today. Maybe I wrestle with that and you don't. I don't know. Maybe you should be preaching the message and I don't. Because I have these questions that I wrestle with about God, why did you do it that way? Why did you start the whole thing on a wrong foot, kind of? That's not the rules that people created for you to live by, right? Anyway, we can relate to this, though. We can relate. See if some or all of these might apply to you. Because as good, kind-hearted, church-going people, we still have these expectations that get smuggled in. Sometimes religious leaders even feed them to us because we're just so hungry for some kind of hope or promise or that things are going to get better. Or because the future is scary and people are mean and we just want something to hold on to. So do you see yourself in any of these? Our expectation is that if we obey God's will, we'll be spared from pain and suffering. How's that working out for us? Okay, we're going to move on. If we raise our kids in church, they'll never struggle, especially with doubt. You let the church raise your kids, we'll take care of them for you. How's that working? Okay. Maybe you were that church kid, Anyway, if you keep yourself pure, you'll have a fantastic marriage. No problems. Your chemistry is going to be amazing. They call this the kind of the prosperity, evangelical prosperity gospel. If you do all the right things for God, God will work everything out in your life. If you have strong faith, you won't struggle with mental or physical health issues. If you just believe enough, all these problems, God will take care of this. So obviously, our lives don't work out quite like this. And it sends us kind of spiraling sometimes. God, why would you do this to me after all the things that I've done for you?
Have you ever said that to God? Don't raise your hand. Have you ever whispered that in your heart? And here's the thing. He's not intimidated by those sorts of like questions or maybe anger directed at, like, God commended Job because Job has big questions about his life and how it worked out. But he did not sin. Why didn't he sin? Because he brought them to God. So God is not afraid. You don't have to sit in the expectation versus reality tension and just suck it up and pretend to have it together. You can be you. You can certainly bring that to God. And what I would hope is our community that can bear up under that burden with you. But you could certainly bring that to God and understand that even if you don't get your questions answered all in that moment or your problem solved all in that moment, God is exactly the one who wants to hear the most what's going on in your heart. He wants to know your emotions and feelings and struggles about the expectations versus the reality of what you're experiencing, okay? So, expectations versus reality, again, very important lens to see this through, but it's the surprise of it. Because often, and I'm trying to, it's Hallmark Christmas movie season, you know what I mean? And they're all the same. They're all the same. But you watch them, or at least have them on in the background, right? No judgment here. The judgment-free zone when it comes to Hallmark Christmas movies. The thing is, I'm trying not to let this message be kitschy in that sense. Folksy, like Hallmark Christmas movie. You're going to hear maybe some of the, believe in God, and that's great. But realize this expectation versus reality, this is revolutionary stuff when it touches the human soul. When we actually let ourselves wrestle with this and sit with this and not put this Christmas veneer over the top of it, but understand that there's real heartbreak that many of us are experiencing right now in this room. That many of us are looking at the reality of Christmas and wondering, the expectation is we want to celebrate a good Christmas, and the reality is I don't know how that's possible this year. Like, that could be a lot of us, or a mixture of highs and lows altogether. And in the midst of that, God is still working. God will surprise you, because that's what he's been doing since the beginning. So I want to look at Luke chapter 2 and look at the expectation, the reality, and how God shows up unexpectedly. Okay, so this is Luke 2, verse 1. In those days, Caesar Augustus issued a decree that a census should be taken of the entire Roman world. This was the first census that took place while Quirinius was governor of Syria. And everyone went to their own town to register. So Joseph also went up from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to Bethlehem, the town of David, because he belonged to the house and line of David. He went there to register with Mary, who was pledged to be married to him and was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for the baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no guest room available for them. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today, in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. This will be a sign to you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." Suddenly a company of the heavenly host appeared with the angel, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those whom his favor rests." When the angels had left them and gone into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, "Let's go to Bethlehem and see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about." So they hurried off and found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. So Luke is intentionally painting a contrast. In the opening verses, he mentions Caesar Augustus. He's the most powerful man on the face of the earth at the time. His decrees reorder nations completely. And the census exists to increase his control, increase taxes, and increase his reach. So there's the broad scale, the macro, and then Luke zooms in to the micro. all the way down from the emperor's palace to the young couple walking this dusty road in obscurity. And this is the point. God is beginning the greatest story on earth in a place no one is looking. Don't you find that fascinating? That Jesus could have been born in Jerusalem or somewhere in Babylon, somewhere in a palace, but he was born where no one was looking. No one would ever think to look. And he seeded the Old Testament with all these promises, these prophecies, and still no one had put it together. God actually likes the obscurity, the little thing that takes time to form, where no one's watching or paying attention. God is still at work, and he might be there at work the most. So let's take a look closer. I just want to point a few things out to this. Nazareth is an unimportant town. Nazareth sits so far off the trade routes that many scholars think it had only a few hundred people in Jesus' day. It's the kind of place where everybody knows everyone. You know, small town Kansans, everybody knows everybody's business. There's like a great benefit to that, but like if you're trying to hide something or you like don't want everybody to know your business, it's kind of uncomfortable. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everything about everyone, where nothing exciting ever happens, and where no one expects anything to ever change. It was so obscure, it isn't mentioned even in the Old Testament or Josephus or the Talmud. It's literally a non-place. It's nowheresville. It's the back hills of nowhere. Which is why Nathanael in the early chapters of the Gospels blurred out to Jesus, or about Jesus, can anything good come out of Nazareth? And God's answer is yes. Yes, something good can come from Nazareth. In fact, everything good comes from a Nazareth. That's God's pattern. He begins in places we'd skip over on the map. Anybody else resent being called flyover country by some of our politicians? Jesus gets that. This was total flyover country, had airplanes been born. Or been invented. He chooses what feels small, unimportant, and beneath the noise. And that's good news for anyone who feels overlooked, forgotten, or just plain ordinary. Jesus gets that too. So second, Mary and Joseph are ordinary, uncelebrated people. Mary and Joseph were not celebrities. They did not have a platform. They were not influencers, nowhere even close to that. They weren't priests, scholars. They weren't leaders of anything. Mary is a teenage girl from a poor family. Joseph works with his hands in a vocation that is not well respected. They don't bring political connections or religious influence to the table. They bring nothing but their availability and their obedience. Anybody have any of that laying around? Availability and obedience. Like, there's nothing going on around here. That's called availability, by the way. So when your teenagers tell you, I'm bored, you're just like, hey, that's great. You're available for God. Good job. Just work on the obedience part, please. No offense. Okay. God chooses, if God were to build a movement by human logic, these two would never make the short list. God chooses ordinary people because ordinary people can't steal the spotlight. If he were building a movement with just human logic, Mary and Joseph would never make the list. But this should encourage every one of us. It should. Who feel like we have no platform, no special qualifications, no interesting resume. God tends to start his greatest work with people like Mary and Joseph. People who just say yes. They just show up. They're at the right place at the right time because they're available and they say yes, right? Third, a manger is at the forefront of this instead of a throne. A manger is not cute, y'all. Like, I know there are cute manger pictures out there and all your little nativity scenes and they're not cute. You ever see the inside of a doghouse after it's been used for a decade? It's rough. No pun intended, but I'll take it, all right? It's not pretty, all right? Manger isn't cute. It's not polished. It's not sentimental. It's a feeding trough. You put slop in there for the animals. to chow down on. That's it. I mean, the DFAC at Fort Riley is better maintained, right? That's what I'm saying. It would have been rough, smelly, and way unsanitary. You would never place anything you cared about near that thing. And this is the cradle of the Messiah. I mean, I love Christmas because just these things that I say out loud, I go, who would invent this? Like, no one would invent this. A feeding trough becomes a cradle for the Messiah, the Savior of the world. Like, the humility of God blows my mind when you slow down to think about it. And to think about, God didn't complain about any of this. He's the one that wrote the story. It's amazing to me. Rome's ruler is flexing his power at the top of the world while God is entering it at the bottom. He's saying something about how God moves. He doesn't need luxury, prestige, or glory to accomplish his purposes. He's comfortable entering into the most humble environments. He doesn't wait for perfection. He steps right into the mess. For anyone who feels like your life is too chaotic, too broken, too unfinished for God to touch or have anything to do with, this detail is God whispering to all of us, I come right in the middle of all of that. Fourth, shepherds are the first witnesses. Shepherds in the first century were near the bottom of the social ladder. Their work made them ceremonially unclean. So they couldn't come around normal, the white-collar workers of the day. They had to stay far out and go through ritualistic cleansing when they wanted to go do, temple things and regular worship. Their work made them unclean, and their reputation was questionable. Their testimony, I actually didn't know this until I read into this. Their testimony was inadmissible in court. Right? And these guys are the first visitors of little baby Jesus. The shepherds are the first to hear the announcement. Heaven literally opens above them. Angels fill the sky. And God says, in effect, tell them first. Them. I want them to know about it. No, not the popular ones, not the ones with all the great resume-filling capabilities. Those guys. The forgotten, the last, the least, them. And let's just freak them out a little bit too. I love that about God. It's like the heavens opens and they were terrified. Like, that's not how you would think it goes. But apparently parts of heaven are kind of terrifying to the uninitiated, right? He's just see those guys, just scare them real good. I know it's dark. I know it's the middle of the night. Just freak them out a little bit. Just wake them up, right? Okay. So they're first to hear the announcements. Not the priests, not the scholars, not the gatekeepers, not the powerful, not anybody else. The shepherds. The shepherds. It's an upside-down movement that matches the entire story. God reveals himself not to the spiritually elite, but to the spiritually available. There that is again. And their response is simple. They hurry. They go. They find him. They worship. They don't understand everything. They didn't get their, THD and homiletics or any of that on the way. They just hurried. And they were there. They obeyed. And they were interested. They were interested. It's kind of like Moses drawing a way to see the burning bush. That's interesting. Let's go check that out. And he has a God moment there. So it's just not interest or availability. It's obedience to take the step that's been required. God still seems to enjoy revealing himself to people like this. Those who are open, responsive, and willing to go see it for themselves. So every detail here, every person or thing indicated is special in this narrative. Nazareth is a place that no one looks. Mary and Joseph are people that no one chooses. The manger is the setting that no one wants. And the shepherds is the audience no one respects. And that is the story that God tells. That's what he puts together for the birth narrative of his son Jesus. This is not accidental. It's God's signature. He plants renewal in small, fragile, unexpected places, and he chooses the ordinary. He works in obscurity, and he delights in beginnings that don't look like beginnings at all. Because when it grows, there's no doubt who did it, and there's no doubt who deserves all the credit. It's all God. So I want to talk just a little bit about how we recognize God. So much of this really hinges on like being available, but also recognizing God's activity in the midst of our lives. So I just want to briefly talk about that. We're doing okay? Doing okay? You feeling Christmassy yet? You getting there? Okay, all right. I've got a sweater on. I know it's still black. I do have a sweater on. Okay, so I'm working on being festive. Okay, so how do we recognize God in the small hidden parts of our lives? Okay, I've got 4 things. It's obviously not exhaustive, but it's something I think that we can introduce into our lives. Maybe pick one, or focus on one in particular and walk it out. Okay, first, paying attention to ordinary moments. God often does his deepest work in the middle of routines we barely notice. It's that quiet drive to work, right? Where you're kind of like, you could go a couple ways. You could go into, I'm late, I'm in a hurry, I'm stressed, this day's going to be terrible now. You could do that. You could go like, no matter what, I'm still going to have a good day. I'm going to choose joy. I'm going to choose to be positive. I'm going to look for ways to encounter God or notice someone. It could be a small conversation that's an ordinary moment with your teenager that opens a door. It's like with kids, a lot of important conversations start with, hey, Dad. And I got to be listening for it. Hey, Mom. You have to be aware that sometimes they drop that $1 million question of like, wow, they've really been listening to me, paying attention to me. Yay, and oh no, at the same time. And so I want to be present for these conversations. It's a moment of stillness in the morning where you just have the light bulb moment, something you've been chewing on or it's in the back of your brain suddenly comes to the forefront and aha, there it is. I mean, some of these ordinary moments, especially for introverts, they happen in the coffee that you scheduled a month ago that you're now looking at your schedule for tomorrow and going, why did I do that? Like, why did I schedule it right then? I really don't want to go to this. 10 out of 10, I'm 9.5 out of 10. I'm glad I showed up. Like almost every time I'm like, oh, that was so good. I'm so glad. I think those are the God moments where it's like, I don't know the spiritual dynamic of what if it's a testing or whatnot, but those moments where you're almost ready to talk yourself out of something, and it's just like, I just need to follow through on this because it's the right thing to do. And God shows up and something happens there. Sometimes these manger moments in our lives, they're not dramatic. They don't have flair. They're just subtle, but they're real. Second, value overlooked people. This is the season. I mean, from the start of November, when there was food insecurity in our communities, all the way through Christmas, this is the time to look for people to help, and especially the overlooked among us and around us. Valuing overlooked people. The first people to hear the news of Jesus' arrival were the shepherds. Men, no one expected to matter. No one expected to ever believe their story. Remember, their testimony is inadmissible in court. Who are they going to tell that the host showed up, right? I don't know. That's interesting to me. But who are the shepherds in our world? Who are the people that are just easily overlooked, that become sort of the part of the landscape? We just kind of live with how it is, or we do our routine and see the same couple people, and we just blow right past. Who are those people around us that we and others often overlook? Who are the shepherds, the coworker who never speaks up in meetings, the neighbor you wave to, but man, you really can't pull their last name. Maybe it's 50-50 on the first name. Okay, not you guys, somebody else, because you're all much better neighbors than most people, right? The family member who feels like background noise in a busy season. You've got the cousin you're on good terms with and you like, but you're going to have 5 minutes of a good conversation. And you know that going into Christmas and the holiday visits. Maybe it's time that we look for people to engage with instead of waiting for everything to come to us. God often speaks through people we don't think to notice. John Stott said, God uses weak men and women to accomplish his purposes, so that it's plain, it's his work, not ours. God uses these people a lot in our life to remind us the world is not ours. It's not about us. This is not our world and everybody else is just living in it. We are here for each other. We're here to worship God and serve other people, okay? So God uses those people to like as a kind of like a dashboard, warning of like, hey, there are important people all around us. You can try to ignore them, like your, dashboard lights. You can put tape over it if you want to, but it's still there. And God knows that we know who's around us, okay? Third, trusting humble beginnings. God's work usually starts smaller than we prefer. We are so bought into the American idea of success where everything is gold and glitzy. If it's worth doing, it's worth telling everybody about and how awesome it's going to be, right? Like, if you don't nail a sale that gets $10,000 of commission, you feel like a failure because your coworker did last week. If we don't have a church that's bigger than whatever, you feel kind of bad because all the other churches or whatever that your friends go to, right? If your car isn't the nicest and newest, you kind of are ashamed driving it up to your parents' house because your cousins and brother and whatever, right? We've so bought into what success actually, what it looks like in America, we forget what success looks like to God. To God, success is overlooked because it's not flashy. It's not loud. It doesn't beg people to pay attention to it. It's not trying to sell you tickets to its show. God's success is quiet, it's slow, it's sometimes ignored and often overlooked. Okay? His work sometimes starts with a single counseling session that you've been saying, I'm going to do this someday. It's a short prayer whispered, sometimes in frustration, that becomes a rhythm or an anchor of hope when it catches. It could be a tiny habit, like you get serious in Bible reading. It could be 10 minutes a day, it could be 2 verses. But you read maybe 5 minutes, and that starts something. It slowly reshapes your inner world. It's maybe just 10 minutes of silence in a day that is so loud and vying for your attention from a screen. Just sitting with a piece of paper and a pen and writing down your prayers or your thoughts. It could be small, little things that begin to take root. We want the throne room, but God wants the manger. Okay, and fourthly, celebrating small signs of life. When the shepherds found Jesus lying in a manger, that was enough for them to rejoice. They didn't see the miracles, the cross, the resurrection. They celebrated the beginning. In your life, those beginnings might look like one good day in the middle of a hard season. It could be like, I made it to the gym today, y'all. Celebrate me, clap for me, right? It could be a moment of connection with someone you love. Or someone, the relationship is just kind of like you've drifted and you want to rekindle that friendship again. It could be a flicker from who knows where to pray again, to just say a couple verses out loud or grab the Book of Common Prayer or something and get in touch with God again. Don't wait for the whole story to make sense. And certainly this, don't wait to understand the whole story to see if you agree with how it ends or not. Many times God does not tell us the ending because, number one, we would probably not believe it. And number two, we would not agree with the path that it takes to get there. Hello, is this on? Am I connecting with you all? Do you get that? Like, God sometimes, often, does not tell us the end of the story because that's a jagged pill to swallow. But it turns out, the surprise of it turns out so much better than we could ever hope or expect or imagine. And God loves surprise, like we are. We're covenanted to a God that does like surprises, and introverts like me just have to put up with it. We have to get on board with it, okay? So don't wait for the whole story to make cerebral sense to you. Celebrate the small, early, fragile signs that God is at work in your life right now, okay? So, and I kind of already answered this, but sometimes there might be this question of like, so why? Why doesn't God show up bigger in our lives? He could do it. I could handle it because I'm different than other people, right? Don't you tell yourself like, God, I know everybody else blew it when you did the big thing in their life, but I'm different. And I can handle it. He's like, you're so cute. You're so awesome. So why doesn't God show up? And there might be different, you might think of different reasons for that. But one that I've come up with is that God's work isn't about a spectacle. He doesn't need the attention. He doesn't crave it. He's not a sycophant. He doesn't need the spectacle. It's about the transformation on our end. Often starting quietly, humble beginnings allow our heart to recognize what He's doing. So He gets the buy-in when it's small and slow and quiet. And it's the regular process of whatever He's invited you to step into that transforms us into the person who loves more like Jesus and is kind and patient like Jesus. That's what He's after, not the show. He doesn't need that, okay? So here's what I want to invite you into. I want to do a couple things. Why don't you stand with me? I'm going to have the communion servers and the worship team come up. We're going to do a couple things. We're going to, in a minute, receive communion. We're going to pray the Lord's Prayer. Well, I want to give you one thing to sit with this week, okay? I want you to pay attention to one small, ordinary thing each day. And it could be the same thing each day. It doesn't have to be new every time. But one small, ordinary thing where God could be at work. Maybe it's a routine that you've kind of fallen into. Maybe it's going to the same place and, you're facing a screen, ignoring the people around you. What's the small routine thing? It could be packing your kids' lunch. It could be driving through your neighborhood. It could be taking a walk. Whatever that ordinary thing is, I just want you to invite God to show you how He's moving and how He's working in that moment. What is it? And it could just be, God, what are you doing right now? Where are you at work? Help me see that. That could be it. That could be the whispered prayer that you just carried with you throughout the week of whatever it is you're doing. I want you to look for the subtle signs, and they are subtle. They are so subtle. But when you see them and you see them repeatedly, you'll recognize God at work. The subtle signs of His movement. And I want you to celebrate where you see Him showing up, okay? That's your homework. That's your put it into practice this week. Just be aware of God just a little bit more, okay?